Hello, YouTube. Today, I will continue my presentation on the mysteries of the moon, its exploration, possibilities, and reasons for. Also, one of the most inexplicable events that relates to the moon, and a hypothesis about alien presence on the satellite of our planet, or remnants of such presence. This is a most fascinating subject and, of course, no longer in the realm of abstract discussions. Mankind is getting to the moon urgently. Why now? Well, the reserves of many rare earth metals are close to exhaustion. Does mankind need a lunar base? Russian astronomer Vladislav Shevchenko explained that minerals can be mined on the moon. Let's see what he says. On January 2nd, 1959, the Soviet Lunar 1 station was launched. It was the first spacecraft that overcame the Earth's gravity and began exploring its satellite. After 60 years, mankind has finally seriously thought about the exploration of the moon. The leading space powers plan to build a base on the satellite of our planet by the year 2030. But does this discovery benefit people, or do states want to earn prestige points on image projects? Russian media discussed the future of lunar research with Vladislav Shevchenko, who is the head of the Department of Lunar and Planetary Research at the Sternberg State Astronomical Institute of the Lomonosov Moscow State University. I think this is very interesting for the rest of the world to know, and I just want to add a few comments regarding subjects that the Russian scientist is coyly silent about. So, the question of the media is, why is this necessary? According to Shevchenko, if we leave out the idea of relocation to other planets for ideological reasons, as suggested by Elon Musk, then the development of the moon has two goals: obtaining scientific knowledge and profit. It is probably impossible to make a short-term profit on the moon, but critics often question the scientific feasibility. Science is important, they say, but are the costs of a habitable permanent base really justified? After all, for much less money, you can send a dozen automatic lunar rovers, and they will answer all the questions of interest to scientists without risking the lives of the crews and excessive government spending. As an example, critics cite flights under the Apollo program in the last century, which allegedly had zero scientific value. Indeed, the American lunar program was conceived from the very beginning for political purposes, and of the 12 people who visited the moon, only one was a professional scientist. The rest were military. Despite the opinion about the zero scientific result of the Apollo program is erroneous, says Shevchenko. Now, let me remind you and the Russian scientists that the Soviet space program was 85% military programs and 90% of it very secretive. I would say most secretive. And I will remember this from my life in the USSR too. Just saying. Okay, so let's get back to the Russian scientists' views. During the first landing alone, it was possible to establish that 1, the moon was formed hot and had a magmatic ocean. 2, it was magmatically active for 800 million years. 3, the moon is not covered with quicksand dust. It is quite convenient to walk, ride on it, and you can land a spaceship. In addition, during the entire program, the astronauts placed seismometer complexes, measured the heat flux from the satellite core, collected solar wind samples, took IV photographs of astronomical objects, conducted many experiments with a magnetometer, and also brought 382 kilograms of lunar soil to Earth to investigate the mechanical properties of regolith and lunar dust. By and large, the scientific results of the Apollo are comparable to those of all Martian vehicles in the aggregate, adjusted for the development of technology. So the scientist Vladislav Shevchenko cites the discovery of orange soil on the moon as an example of the benefits of having living ice. Geologist Jack Schmidt was the first scientist included in the expedition. Standing on the lunar surface, he noticed an orange ground. As it turned out, it had not been noticed during previous landings. He saw it with the eyes of an expert, a specialist, but 6 previous crews and automatic devices could not, says Shevchenko. Subsequently, it turned out that the orange hue of the regolith is given by small grains of volcanic glass, rich in iron and zinc oxide. Finally, the advantage of humans over robots is noticeable even on the example of modern devices, the Curiosity rover and the stationary Mars probe InSight. The first of them in 2016, after 3 years of operation, the drill feed mechanism failed, which ensures its retraction and pulling the rig fixed on the robotic arm. This suspended the experiments for 2 years until engineers came up with a new approach to control the depth of immersion of the drill by moving the entire robotic arm. The InSight spacecraft also had problems with HP3, a device for measuring heat flow from the Martian interior. This device is made in the form of a self-hammering nail and was supposed to be buried to a depth of 5 meters, but eventually stopped just a few centimeters from the surface. No matter how hard the scientists tried, they could not immerse it into the target depth. They could only tamp or cram it into the ground to a full height of 40 centimeters with the help of a robotic scoop. Both of these problems could not occur to a person with a drill and a shovel. So, what problems are to be solved? The moon is an extremely inhospitable place for humans, and therefore survival there is possible only by creating artificial conditions with the help of technology. A fundamental problem is connected with this. Any device has mass and volume, and logistical capabilities in lunar missions are extremely limited. The lander of the Apollo program held 3.5 tons. The lunar version of the Starship rocket, which NASA chose for landing under the Artemis program, should hold about 100 tons, according to the ambitious plans of Elon Musk. This is not enough for the construction of an autonomous, repeatedly duplicated, fault-tolerant life support infrastructure, and therefore all existing plans for the construction of the base imply the use of local resources. The most popular resource for mankind is water. It is necessary for drinking, washing, growing plants. Many chemical reactions are associated with this. In addition, it is a source of hydrogen and oxygen, from which fuel can also be made. It is also required for cooling. On a lunar day, the surface can heat up to 100 degrees, and Apollo-era spacesuits sublimated more than half a liter of water per hour to avoid this. That is why new American landings are planned in areas near the South Pole. Scanning from orbit shows that a lot of water has accumulated there. It is not yet clear whether it was brought by comets or whether the flow of hydrogen ions, protons, of the solar wind reacted with the lunar soil and oxidized the water to water. But in any case, its large masses accumulated in the polar deep craters. At the lunar poles, as on our planet, the sun never rises high and doesn't sink low below the horizon. And therefore, there are both peaks of eternal light and pits of eternal darkness, where the ice never melts. However, before it can be used, automatic probes will have to scout out exactly what form the lunar water lies in, so that engineers can develop a technology for mass extraction. In addition to water, lunar residents will need a lot of building materials, at least because the radiation background on the Earth's satellite is about 200 times higher than on Earth, and it is impossible to live in an inflatable tent or under a thin aluminum roof for a long time. In addition, the moon has no atmosphere, and even tiny meteorites the size of a grain of sand can cause damage due to the enormous speed of the fall. In this regard, it is planned to use the lunar soil itself as protection. There are two options. You can sprinkle the dwelling with a layer of regolith so thick that it protects from cosmic radiation like the Earth's atmosphere and magnetosphere. According to calculations by Robert Wimmer Schwangruber from the German Christian Albrecht University, this layer should exceed 70 centimeters. That is, astronauts will need either earth-moving equipment or intensive work with shovels. Ryan Watkins, a physicist from the Planetary Institute of the United States, suggests settling people inside lava tubes, natural caves left over from the magmatic activity of the Earth's satellite. Finally, there is a lot of research on the manufacture of regolith building blocks. For example, with the help of microwaves, it can be baked into the likeness of bricks, from which people or robots will build the outer layer of the dwelling. The moon is also rich in the most important metals, aluminum and iron. Iron is represented by pyroxenes and olivine, as well as hematite, the main terrestrial iron ore. However, the Earth's ferrous metallurgy relies on the reducing properties of carbon monoxide obtained from coal, while on the moon it will have to resort to various exotic processes. For example, Lunar Resources recently received $3 million from NASA to create a prototype installation capable of extracting metals, including iron and aluminum, from molten regolith using electrolysis. This method is very energy intensive, and therefore a powerful power plant will be required to use it. It is expected that the prototype of the automatic device will be ready to be sent to the moon for testing by 2024. Alternatively, you can use iron-containing metal powder from lunar dust, filter it with magnets, and mold parts using 3D printers and powder metallurgy. All of the above mining methods are needed only for the construction of facilities on the moon itself. Even if we assume that the cost of a flight to the moon and back will fall below the cost of launching SpaceX Falcon 9, what is about $50 million. The price of steel per kilogram is too low for its export to Earth to become profitable in the foreseeable future. Transportation, for example, of gold at a price of about $60 million per ton could hypothetically pay off, but the moon's gold veins are unknown to mankind, and the existing demand can be met by the Earth industry. However, Professor Shevchenko believes that there is at least one type of metals, the import of which from the moon is already justified. The Earth reserves of many rare earth metals of the lanthanide group are already close to exhaustion. Consulting firms claim that the explored reserves will run out in a few decades. Lanthanides are necessary for many high-tech devices. For example, the composition of touch screens of phones includes indium, the stock of which is extremely small. Engineers are looking for a replacement for indium, but there are a lot of reserves of it on the moon, and we can indicate areas where the concentration of rare earth metals is high, according to the scientists. So how and when will they fly? Full information is available only on the plans of the United States, since NASA is traditionally an organization open to the public, stated Shevchenko. The American lunar program is based on a number of key provisions. The astronauts will be transported from Earth to the lunar orbit by a bundle of the Orion spacecraft and the SLS rocket, which after so many years of delays still went on a test flight to the moon and successfully completed it. At the L1 Lagrange point of the Earth-Moon system, astronauts dock at the Gateway station located there. Its construction as a transshipment base halfway to the Earth satellite will begin in 2024. SpaceX Starship rocket will launch people from Gateway to the lunar South Pole. During the first landing of Artemis 3, scheduled for 2026, it is planned to stay at the site for about a week, collect scientific data, and scout the area, then return to Gateway and from there to Earth in an Orion capsule. The use of Starship so far looks like the riskiest part of the program, since at the end of 2022, its prototypes have not made a single space flight, and the claims of American environmental organizations jeopardize the performance of the site in Boca Chica in Texas, where it is being tested. A number of scientists believe that the work of the spaceport harms the local population of yellow-legged plovers. And until the end of these disputes, the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration cannot authorize test flights. In addition, NASA is planning many support missions under the CLPS, Commercial Lunar Services Program. Several private companies will deliver Scout rovers, prototype instruments, orbiters, and much more to the moon that is necessary to launch the base. The most important device from this series will be the Viper lunar rover, equipped with a research drill and a set of instruments for accurate mapping of resources in the area of the pole. Without it, it is unlikely to be possible to find out where it is worth extracting ice. The construction of the lunar base itself is still planned for 2030, when its first module, the foundational surface habitat, will be delivered during the Artemis 8. Detailed plans of the base itself do not yet exist. It is only known that the primary task, in addition to the installation of housing, will be to provide the base with electricity. This is planned to be done using a combination of solar panels and batteries, as well as at the expense of a portable nuclear reactor with a capacity of about 10 kW. Its prototype kilopower, which resembles a home refrigerator in size, performed well during tests in 2018. Much less is known about the plans of Russia and China. The Russian RSC Energia has published a report according to which 4 launches of Super Heavy Angara A5B missiles will be required for a single mission. The ship will be gradually assembled in near-Earth orbit. The first Angara will lift the takeoff and landing module, then a transport module with hydrogen-oxygen engines will be attached to it, which will take the assembly to the moon. A month later, a manned Orleanak will be launched, and a month later, a new transport module that will tow the Orleanak to the moon. The entire complex is assembled in lunar orbit. The astronauts move into the lander and land on the moon. In total, the crew will have to spend about 2 weeks on the moon. The launch is scheduled for approximately 2030. Russia intends to build the International Lunar Station itself, together with China. The published roadmap assumes 5 missions for this. During the first of them, a command center, a power plant, and communications equipment will be installed. The third will be devoted to the development of local resources, and the fifth, the last of the planned ones, will be related to astronomy. A nuclear reactor should be installed on this base as well as on the American one, and among the notable differences, it is worth mentioning plans to develop a lunar hopper. This device, according to the statement of the general designer of the lunar program, China, Wu Weizhen will be able to charge from the reactor and with the help of this energy jump over the surface many times. It can be compared to a quasi-ballistic transport missile designed, for example, to deliver water from eternally shaded craters. I have more on the Chinese lunar program planning in my video. I will attach a URL to the description of this one. China is a separate subject, and I have done my research. You can see it, and of course we'll keep an eye on its space program to the extent possible. So those are the plans for using the moon as a sort of cornucopia for our future needs. I suspect there are other plans we do not know about in the developing stages, or more than that, based on possible presence on the moon of forces that can actually challenge us. And this is, of course, top secret. But later on in this video, I want to present some interesting information from Ukraine. But right now, let me tell you something very interesting that happened with our satellite many centuries ago. So what happened to the moon in the year 1178? Well, the moon is without a doubt one of the most mysterious objects in our sky. Thousands of years ago, ancient civilizations looked at the moon with awe, considering it some kind of divine phenomenon. The only satellite of our planet is the hero of numerous myths and conspiracy theories. And this is quite understandable, because all sorts of strange things are associated with it. And I've done a few videos about it, which you can find in my channel. And I am in awe of the moon, and I still am trying also to understand what is it. So, who blew up the moon? One of the stories happened on June 18, 1178. A group of monks from Canterbury, southeast England, watched as the moon suddenly exploded and turned into sparks, taking on blackish appearance. Yes, sounds bizarre and strange and odd. Let's see. On the Sunday before the feast of Saint John the Baptist after sunset, when we saw its light for the first time of the new moon, 5 or more men sitting face to face observed a miraculous sign. Now there was a clear new moon, and as usually happens in this phase, its horns stretched to the east. And friend, suddenly the upper horn split in two. A burning torch burst out of the middle of it, throwing flames, coals, and sparks far away. The body of the moon, which was lower, curved, and according to those who said they saw it with their own eyes, the moon trembled like a snake that was struck. After that, everything returned to its original state. So what did the monks observe in 1178? Did the moon really explode? According to some modern researchers, in fact, people did not witness the explosion of the moon. They just observed a powerful impact of some large body that crashed into the surface of our only satellite. As a result of this collision, a crater was formed, which we know today as the Giordano Bruno crater. However, there are people who disagree with this hypothesis. They believe that a blow of such force would send a lot of debris towards the Earth, which would lead to the presence of a much larger number of witnesses to this strange phenomenon. Indeed, studies have shown that within a week after such an impact, at least 10 million tons of ejected lunar rock should enter the Earth's atmosphere. According to a report released on this occasion by NASA, such a collision would cause a week-long meteor storm on Earth. But nevertheless, there is no mention of such a storm in any known historical sources, including European, Chinese, Arabic, Japanese, and Korean astronomical archives. So what was it then? A collective hallucination or a conscious fake? One can only guess. But according to many researchers, in principle, this phenomenon can be explained. Most likely, the monks saw an explosion in the atmosphere of a powerful meteor, in the place where the monks were, and only from there, this event looked as if someone had blown up the moon, while people in other places have observed such a phenomenon as a bright shooting star. The monks from contemporary most likely just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And they saw a meteor that exploded right against the background of the moon. This explains why only 5 people saw the phenomenon. Or maybe, in fact, it was an alien thermonuclear reactor that exploded. Now I want to tell you, while you ponder on the reasons for this sighting, I want to tell you something from the research of Dr. Alexei Arkhipov, a great Ukrainian scientist that more people should know about on our planet, from the Institute of Radio Astronomy, National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine. And of course, his knowledge is incomparable, in my opinion. I've read his books, I've corresponded with him many years ago, and I do want to present some of his studies and views. And here's one of them. Of course, he's been looking at the moon for a long time. This is from his articles. Our moon is a potential indicator of a possible alien presence near the Earth at some time during the past 4 billion years. To ascertain the presence of alien artifacts, a survey for ruin-like formations on the moon has been carried out as a precursor to lunar archaeology. Computer algorithms for semi-automatic archaeological photoreconnaissance are discussed, and I will not go into the algorithm, but I do want to present the general picture. So let me continue from Arkhipov's work. About 80,000 Clementine lunar orbital images have been processed, and a number of quasi-rectangular patterns found. Morphological analysis of these patterns leads to possible reconstruction of their evolution in terms of erosion. 2 scenarios are considered. 1, the collapse of subsurface quasi-rectangular systems of caverns, and 2, the erosion of hills with quasi-rectangular lattices of lineaments. We also note the presence of embankment-like quadrangular hollow hills with rectangular depressions nearby. Tectonic geologic interpretations of these features are considered. The similarity of these patterns to terrestrial archaeological sites and proposed lunar base concepts suggest the need for further study and future in situ, meaning on-site exploration. Introduction. The idea of lunar archaeology was discussed long before spaceflight. In the 1930s, J. Wyndham, also alias J. Bignon, wrote The Last Lunarians, a fictional report about an archaeological mission to the moon. In writing about the discovery of an ancient lunar artifact in the short story The Sentinel, Arthur C. Clarke said, "There are times when a scientist must not be afraid to make a fool of himself. Today, the idea of exploring the moon for non-human artifacts is not a popular one among selenologists. Yet, because we know so little about the moon, the investigation of unusual surface features can only add to our knowledge. When we return to the moon, it is possible that lunar archaeological studies may someday follow." It has been argued that the moon could be used as an indicator of extraterrestrial visits to our solar system. Unfortunately, the detection of ET artifacts on the moon is outside the interest of most selenologists, those who study the moon, due to their orientation towards natural formations and processes. It is also not of interest to mainstream archaeologists. as archaeology tends to adhere to the pre-Copernican geocentric point of view. In 1992, the search for alien artifacts on the moon, abbreviated as SEAM, the first privately organized archaeological reconnaissance of the moon, was initiated. The justifications of the lunar SETI, search for extraterrestrial intelligence, the wording of specific principles of lunar archaeology, and the search for promising areas on the moon were the first stage of the project, years 1992-1995. Preliminary results of the lunar exploration show that the search for alien artifacts on the moon is a promising SETI strategy, especially in the context of lunar colonization plans. The aim of the second stage of SEAM, years 1996-2001, was the search for promising targets of lunar archaeological study. The goals of the second stage involved 1. Developing new algorithms for space archaeological reconnaissance, 2. Using these algorithms to detect possible archaeological sites on the moon, and 3. Examining the reaction of mainstream scientists to these results. Methodology. It is generally accepted that the search for alien artifacts on the moon is not necessary because there are none. Circular logic leads to a deadlock. No finds, hence no searches, hence no finds, etc. Given the success in using terrestrial remote sensing to find archaeological sites on Earth, can similar techniques be used to find possible artificial constructions on the moon and other planets? Hardly, if planetologists think only in terms of natural formations. For example, the ancient Khwarezmian fortress Koy Krilgan Kala in Uzbekistan, constructed between the 4th century BC to the 1st century AD, appeared as an impact crater before excavations in 1956. On the moon, Koy Krilgan Kala would not be perceived among all of the impact craters. Let me stop here for a second and add something. I did a video about Uzbekistan's UFO and ancient mysteries probably 4 years ago, and I will attach the URL here. And I've studied Uzbekistan, let's call it paranormal phenomena scene, for many years as well. And that fortress is incredible. When you look at it, you get that special feeling. And it's hard to take your eyes from that fortress. Look at the video and learn what's going on in Uzbekistan. But let me get back to Archipov's work. Instead of the current presumption that all surface features are natural, an alternative search strategy is to be open to the possible existence of artifacts. If we are open to this possibility, then one can extend Carl Sagan's search criteria for detecting signs of life on Earth to other planets. And here it is. Let us first imagine a photographic reconnaissance by orbiter spacecraft of the Earth in reflected visible light. We imagine we are geologically competent but have no prior knowledge of the habitability of the Earth. Photography of the Earth at a range of surface resolutions down to 1 kilometer reveals a great deal that is of geological and meteorological interest, but nothing whatever of biological interest. At 1 kilometer resolution, even with the highest contrast, there is no sign of life, intelligent or otherwise, in Washington, London, Paris, Moscow, or Beijing. We have examined many thousands of photographs of the Earth at this resolution with negative results. However, when the resolution is improved to about 100 meters, a few hundred photographs of, say, 10 kilometers by 10 kilometers coverage are adequate to uncover terrestrial civilization. The patterns revealed at 100 meters resolution are the agricultural and urban reworking of the Earth's surface in rectangular arrays. These patterns would be extremely difficult to understand on geological grounds even on a highly faulted planet. Such rectangular arrays are clearly not a thermodynamic or mechanical equilibrium configuration of a planetary surface, and it is precisely that the departure from thermodynamic equilibrium which draws our attention to such photographs. In 1962, Sagan spoke on the possibility of discovering alien artifacts on the moon, stating that the forthcoming photographic reconnaissance of the moon from space vehicles, particularly of the back, might bear these possibilities in mind. Rectangular patterns on air-space photos are recognized as signs of human culture in the remote sensing of the Earth and air archaeology. It seems reasonable then to search for rectangular patterns on the moon. For example, assume that the equivalent of proposed modern lunar bases were built long ago. For example, that is 1 to 4 billion years ago on the moon. Such structures would have been built under the surface for protection from ionizing radiation and meteorites. Today, these ancient structures might appear as eroded systems of low ridges and depressions covered by regolith and craters. It is well, I told you about Sagan. I don't want to repeat myself. So let me skip this part and get on to this. A wealth of lunar imagery collected by the Clementine probe are available in digital form. Initial SETI studies used images from the ultraviolet UVVIS camera. The resolution of the UVVIS images is about 200 meters. According to Sagan's detection criteria, this resolution would not be sufficient even to detect the presence of our own civilization on Earth. Studies of the moon at this resolution would probably not reveal any convincing evidence of the existence of artificial structures. On the other hand, Clementine's high-resolution camera produced images of adequate resolution, 9 to 27 meters, but they are much more numerous, about 600,000 images total, and they're thus largely unstudied. So I will not get into the body, like I said, of explanation about the algorithm and discussions of methods used, but I do want to tell you about this. This is what Arkhipov stated about the scientific reaction. The reaction of mainstream science to this study is perhaps the most interesting result of our project. There is a paradoxical contradiction between the vision expressed in science fiction and the agendas of scientific research. Unfortunately, the idea of artificial objects on the moon has been discredited by sensational press. As a result, serious lunar research is not of interest to editors of scientific journals or even popular science magazines. Although the SETI League, Society for Planetary SETI Research, and the Russian SETI Center support these studies, few scientists dare to search for evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence on the moon. Serious interest in archaeological reconnaissance of the moon is practically non-existent in the planetary science community. Yet, as revealed by the SAM project, patterns similar to terrestrial archaeological sites do exist on the moon. Hopefully, lunar scientists may someday be more willing to consider the exciting possibility of the non-human artifacts on the moon. So, what is the conclusion? It is shown that the computerized archaeological reconnaissance of the moon is practical. The proposed methods can be used for more extensive lunar survey and for planetary SETI in general. About 80,000 of Clementine lunar orbital images have been processed, and a number of quasi-rectangular patterns were found in accordance for Sagan's criterion for the detection of intelligent activity in satellite imagery. The morphological analysis of these finds leads to the reconstruction of their evolution in terms of erosion. Two possible evolutionary consequences can be constructed. One, the collapse of subsurface quasi-rectangular systems of caverns, and two, the erosion of hills with quasi-rectangular lattices of lineaments. In addition, embankment-like quadrangle and hollow hills with rectangular depressions were also observed. These finds resemble terrestrial archaeological sites and modern lunar base concepts. So once again, it is recommended that they be explored in situ as possible artifacts. A catalog of promising objects for archaeological reconnaissance of the moon has been compiled. Whether they prove to be artificial or not, these features are examples of unusual lunar geology and merit further study. Modern science and society are not yet prepared for the archaeological reconnaissance of the moon. Nevertheless, a discussion on lunar archaeology will likely occur following the eventual colonization of our satellite. Geologic interpretations of lunar relief are well known, but we must take into other considerations other possibilities as well. Do you understand that once the moon will be colonized, and this is going to happen very quickly, for sure the United States and China will be out there. Russia, I'm not sure because of the current war, and who knows how it will end, and the resources are depleted there. But the other two countries, oh yeah, they will definitely make strides. And I wonder whether what Arkhipov and his colleagues have found has anything to do with the current planning. But let me get you something else from him. It's from the Arkhipov's abstract, from a search for alien artifacts on the moon. And here's what he says. The moon is an attractor of alien artifacts. Hence, the search for alien artifacts on the moon, SAAM, is a promising, unique project developed by the Research Institute on Anomalous Phenomena. SAAM activity and current results are reviewed. Introduction. In recent years, interest has grown among researchers in the search for traces of extraterrestrial intelligence within the solar system. It has been shown earlier that within the time of existence of our planet, approximately 10 stars capable of having inhabited planets approach the Sun to distances within 1.5 pc, according to Arkhipov. Such distances can be covered by space probes even at the present-day level of science and technology. These researchers have chiefly concentrated on a search for artifacts which are in orbit on Earth or on asteroids. It seems that this list should also include the moon. The moon is an attractor of artifacts. As early as in the 1950s, it was noticed that the moon was of great strategic importance for military and weather forecasting observations of our planet. It is reasonable to expect that intelligent beings that might have explored the solar system were interested in the Earth as a unique planet, having a rare oxygen-containing atmosphere and hence a biosphere. Thus, the natural satellite of the Earth could be used as a convenient site for long-term observations of Earth. Additionally, there is a variety of other substantial arguments for placing equipment for prolonged Earth monitoring on the moon rather than in orbit or under Earth. And Arkhipov was talking about this back in 1993. The maximum lifetime lifetime of probes is at least doubled because the moon shields the device from meteorites for 2 steradians. 2 electronic devices will enjoy more stable performance and for longer times because the moon shields equipment from half of the ionizing radiation. 3. Stabilization of apparatus is simple. 4. The mission is easily camouflaged. 5. Lunar soil can be used for life support and repair of the equipment. 6. The unfavorable atmospheric, geological, and biological factors of the Earth are lacking on the moon. It should be emphasized that because of these reasons, landing on the moon would be for ET visitors a necessity rather than convenience. The indisputable advantages of the moon as an intermediate base for interplanetary flights are clearly demonstrated by the rise of interest of the United States and Japanese space agencies in the moon. Of course, at that time, he did not know about China, because China was not doing anything at that time, really. I mean, they were doing explorations, but not to the extent they are involved today. Thus, according to our heap of the moon, should be an attractor of alien artifacts too. The unknown moon, only about 0.5% of the lunar surface has been photographed with a resolution of 1 to 10 meters, but even the 1 meter resolution photography can prove to be sufficient for an artifact discovery. For example, a photograph taken by Lunar Orbiter 3 shows the Surveyor 1 station on the lunar surface merely as a light-colored boulder. Modern lunar base projects contemplate placing manned modules under the lunar surface to protect them from radiation and meteorites. It is not improbable that our predecessors did the same billions of years ago. Since that time, traces of their constructions could be destroyed by erosion, making objects hard to find. Indeed, the rock layer of 1 to 2 meters must have been broken during 1 billion years. However, a few centimeters thick layer of lunar regolith is redistributed, gardened every 106 years. So the search for any small artificial imprints in the soil of more than 107 years of age is naive. In this manner, we can explore only about a fraction of a percent in the age of the lunar crust. But the main obstacle in the search for artifacts is the principle of the Occam's razor, which makes researchers regard a priori an artificial object on the moon as a giant natural formation or excuse me, or as an image defect. A geologist, for instance, will hardly identify a separately standing stone as a menhir even in England, let alone on the moon. It is only a criminalist who can distinguish an artificially exploded crater from a natural one. But the moon is usually studied by geologists, geophysicists, geochemists, and astronomers accustomed to dealing with natural formations. All of this is enough to suggest that the moon is practically untouched in terms of the search for alien artifacts on its surface. The SAM project, it was the unique Ukrainian establishment now involved in the SETI, and it's in the Research Institute of Anomalous Phenomena, RIAP. They used to be active years ago, and some of the members have passed away. It was a great undertaking, and I think the Institute has done so much. And it would be nice if they continued the work, but time takes care of everything. An interesting project, Search for Alien Artifacts on the Moon, SAM, was being developed there. The SAM activity is the following, according to our HIPO back in 1994. Methods of search for rare traces of intelligence on the moon. A. Recommendations for an archaeological reconnaissance of the moon. B. Analysis of reports concerning lunar transient phenomena, LTP. as part of a search for possible manifestations of extraterrestrial intelligence. D. Most probable scenario of interaction between human and non-human cultures on our satellite. An LTP network of observers from Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine has been formed for the SAAM project. There is cooperation with the American Lunar Society. Of course, LTPs cannot be regarded as evidence of artifacts. Rather, they're only hints. Nevertheless, a list of possible SETI areas on the Moon would be used during some lunar missions of the future. The first complex scientific analysis of this problem has been performed by the author, Arhipov. We cite some interesting preliminary results below. Archaeological aspect. Recently, the evolution of small 1 to 10 centimeters artifacts and optical surfaces of the Moon on the Moon has been considered by the author Arhipov. For the first time, the theory of chaotic motions of small objects by the shocks of weak meteoroids was constructed. The following principles of lunar archaeology could be formulated as a consequence of this theory. 1. Only big, less than 1 meter ancient artifacts could be found on the lunar surface. 2. The discovery of small 1 to 10 centimeters artifacts is most probable in the regolith layers at depths of 10 meters and in craters especially. Listen to this. You know now that modern lunar exploration is going to use craters for human habitation in the near future on the Moon. Arhipov has a few things to say. Had years ago. 3. The original site of the artifact usually is different from its discovery site. 4. The excavation must be done within a radius of about 1 kilometer to cover the dispersal area of non-rolling artifacts at least. 5. The old stand sites localized with high accuracy if the smallest and most dense artifacts are used. Lava tubes and strange depressions only 10 years old seem to be promising sites for archaeological reconnaissance. Lunar transient phenomena, star-like phenomena of 20 to 60 minutes duration on the lunar surface appear to be possible manifestations of artifacts on the Moon. The reflection of sunlight from a motionless lunar mirror would look like this, but the mirror area must decrease exponentially from 1 kilometer to only 1.2 meters during approximately 3,105 years because of the lunar dust cover. Nevertheless, there are reports of observations of reflections like transient points in lunar formations that are too old. Aristarchus, Gassendi, Furneris, Stevinus, etc. Obviously, possible natural mirrors from the active geological past of the Moon less than 109 years ago must be destroyed and covered now, but allow us to know that flat polished surfaces are typical of our own space probes and satellites. There are many reports of nocturnal points of light on the Moon. The long lifetime of this point phenomena, from 50 minutes to more than 2 hours, and absence of visible variability contradict all traditional explanations of the nocturnal LTPs. Electrical discharges, luminescence of gas, meteor strikes, etc. It is not possible that some fraction of the nocturnal lights on the Moon could be artificial. Of course, the presumption of naturality, a principal component of current SETI programs, is ineffective in a search for camouflaged activity, but the well-known intelligent scheme of provocation for responsive reaction seems quite pertinent. The invasions by Earth vehicles in certain lunar regions stimulate a statistically significant real temporary increase in the probability of LTPs there. The first impact of Luna 2 and its booster on September 13, 1959 was accompanied by simultaneous LTPs, flashes, dust clouds from at least 4 distant sites. The reports of those LTPs were confirmed. Moreover, a clear invasion effect was also noted in Mare Tranquillitatis, 1964-1969, and in the crater Gassendi, 1966-1967. Observational selection cannot be an adequate explanation of this effect. That is why the artificial interpretation of the invasion effect is worth discussion. I totally agree with Arkhipov. Conclusions. Based on these considerations, it must be concluded that 1. The moon may be an indicator of alien presence in the solar system and beyond during the past years. 2. Although the moon is the best studied celestial body, it is evidently has not been studied well enough for bioastronomy. 3. There are some phenomena on the moon which could be possible manifestations of alien artifacts. 4. It must be expected that alien artifacts, if they exist on the moon, are concentrated in the region of the crater Aristarchus, lava tubes, nocturnal lights, possible mirrors, etc. On the peak of the southern wall of the crater Malapert, the optimal site for alien reconnaissance devices, because the Earth can always be seen there, and sunlight is accessible about 94% of the time. In the crater Herodotus, possible mirror. In the crater Gassendi, possible mirror, invasion effect. In Mare Tranquillitatis, unusual depressions, invasion effects, etc. So the selenological approach seems very promising for SETI. The work is quite contemporary in the context of modern plans for exploration and colonization of the moon. This was written 28 years ago, 27 years ago, and now we know that there is real urgency for major powers on our planet to get to the moon. Very interesting. I will continue my research of the secrets of the moon to the extent possible with open sources. I thank you for your attention to my work. If you can support my work, you will find how to do it in the description. To this video. Please like my video. Please tell others about it. Thank you.